The Lord be with you.
And your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. Jesus came down with the 12 and stopped at a piece of level ground where there was a large gathering of his disciples with a great crowd of people from all parts of Judea and from Jerusalem and from the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be cured of their diseases. Then, fixing his eyes on his disciples, he said, "How happy are you who are poor? Yours is the kingdom of God. Happy you who are hungry now, you shall be satisfied. Happy you who weep now, you shall laugh. Happy are you when people hate you, drive you out, abuse you, denounce your name as criminals on account of Son of Man. Rejoice when that day comes and dance for joy, for then your reward will be great in heaven. This was the way their ancestors treated the prophets. But alas for you who are rich, you are having your consolation now. Alas for you who are filled now, you shall go hungry. Alas for you who laugh now, you shall mourn and weep. Alas for you when the world speaks well about you. This was the way their ancestors treated the false prophets." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I don't know what to speak about the Beatitudes because the Beatitudes in themselves are contradictory. Let us see. First and foremost, what is beatitude? Can anyone speak out? What is beatitude? Don't say all the 8 beatitudes in Matthew's Gospel. Beatitude in itself. The meaning for the word beatitude.
New law.
A new law. Good. And
New commandments.
commandment or law. Then
Blessedness, beatific vision of the human.
this is a blessedness, beatific vision on blessed life. And still, you might have heard number of times the homilies about the Beatitudes, no doubt in that. But we never thought what is a beatitude. Beatitude is a call to practical life rather than love your brother, love your sisters, love God above all things. Keeping all these things aside, it is a practical application to our life where we can apply this, and this application should come as a natural instinct from within us. As when we are feeling hungry, what we do? We search for food, and when we find some food, we go and eat and fill our hunger, and that is our natural instinct. So also, whenever you are feeling hunger for justice, whenever you see that there is some injustice happening, or wherever you see that people are not given equal dignity of life, then we need to respond spontaneously. This is a call to spontaneous response which God is inviting us. And so to say, this is a call to holy life, and this holy life should be achieved not closing your doors and sitting in your room and praying and saying that I am living a holy life. Never such kind of life. But then go into the society, be with the people, and your response, your obligation to the people should make you to feel better and better, holy and holier. So that's why in the beginning I said, beatitude is never a goal, because no one can ever say that I have achieved perfect beatitude, or no one can ever say that I am perfect. But then it is a process, gradual process, where we are, every day of our life, we are becoming better and better. And let's come to beatitude itself first and foremost. Let me ask you one question. How many of you want to be poor? Seriously? How many of you want to be rich? I also want to be rich. Then what about the others? Lukewarmness. How many of you want to be poor? Nobody lifted. There is one soul, good soul. And how many of you want to be rich? Again, nobody lifted. We are sinners. How many of you want to weep and cry? Yeah, cry. Weeping, crying, grief. Why? Why do you want to cry? Just because that Jesus said that we are blessed are those who are weeping, for they shall be consoled. There should be a reason for our weeping. And third question, how many of you want to go hunger? Experience hungry? Absolutely no one. Maybe 1 day, or 2 days, or 3 days. Afterwards, we long for food. Whatever it comes, we eat. And how many want to be suffered, persecuted? Nobody. And let us come in the reverse way. We all want to be rich. We all want to have a nice food. We all want to enjoy and have a cozy life. But does it mean that Jesus is against this kind of life? Jesus said, blessed are the poor, blessed are those who are weeping, blessed are those who are hunger, and blessed are those who are persecuted. Does this mean that all the rich people should go to hell and all the poor people should go to heaven? And all the people who are not having food, they should go to heaven, and all the people who are having 3 meals a day should go to hell? Never like that. Jesus is asking us, what is your internal attitude towards them? When Jesus said, blessed are the poor in the spirit. Poor in the spirit means the spirit is within you. The spirit within you is, what does the spirit within you wants to have? What is it longing for? Is it longing for the God, or is it longing for this worldly possession? And that's why when Jesus said, blessed are the poor in the spirit, the poor primarily, what does the Bible say about the poor is, poor are called as Anavim Yahweh, which means beloved people of Yahweh. It doesn't mean that all the rich people are against God. But what does the poor people implies is those people who rely on God Himself alone. Let us take a poor person in the society. When a poor person he has no money. When he has no money, he has no power. When he has no power, what does he do? He depends on someone else. And ultimately, that someone should be God Himself alone. Rather than that someone whom we are trusting, that someone whom we are relying upon should never be a human being, but then it should be a God Himself alone. That's when first reading we saw, Prophet Jeremiah, he says, the first reading, where blessed are the person who keeps his trust in the Lord, rather than the person who keeps his trust in other human beings. Therefore, it is God whom we need to trust ultimately. That is the being poor in the spirit. Secondly, the spirit within me, what is it longing for? What does it want? What is it craving for? Is it craving for the material possession, or is it craving for the kingdom of God? So ultimately, it is the inner question mark that we need to ask ourselves. We need not to express and show to others, but then we need to ask ourselves and meditate and go ahead in the life. And second beatitude is, blessed are those who are people who are feeling hungry now. Jesus is never against the having a good meal a day. Even Jesus multiplied bread and gave to the people, and said that when the people had sumptuous meals and they collected all the pieces of bread, which means God gave them extravagant food. Even at the wedding at Cana, there was only little amount of wine was enough. But in fact, Jesus transformed water into wine. It is in fact, if you count in today's liters, it's about 950 liters, which could be enough for that couple to enjoy for the whole of their life. So Jesus was giving them more than what they needed. Then why did Jesus say, blessed are the people who are hungry now? There is also a tagline behind. The hunger for injustice, hunger for justice, hunger for righteousness, hunger for dignified life, hunger for equality. Now let us question our life. If suppose some injustice is happening, or suppose there is some bribery is taking place, how many of us are willing and daring to go and question that injustice? We say that let it happen, it has nothing to do with my life. Or we say that we wash our hands, say that it has nothing to do with me, and therefore we choose another direction. So what does the gospel implies is that your spontaneous response to this justice, and this should be your contribution to the society, to the brothers and sisters whom you are loving. And third beatitude is, how happy are you for mourning and weeping, for you shall be comforted. What is this? Happiness and mourning and crying. Both are contradictory in themselves. And what does this mean by this is that whenever we are crying, whenever we are weeping, or whenever we are feeling distress, we should have a hope that God is our consolation and aid. God is always there to help us. So that consolation, that aid should be always there. Then we move ahead in life. And that ray of hope, whenever we have, then we are blessed. Not that the very fact that you are crying, very fact that you are mourning, that doesn't make you happy, a blessed person. But in that mourning and weeping, you should ask yourself, is there God with me? And you should find yourself that, ask for God that to give you the strength to cope up with the situation that you are experiencing in that particular situation. So that is the attitude that God is asking us. And usually when do we mourn, when do we weep is, we mourn and weep only at the funerals, right? So whenever we are losing some beloved ones, we mourn and weep. And even Jesus also was mourning in the gospel. Where he was weeping? On the cross? On the cross, right? Lazarus there, yeah. Today's catechism to mass, when I said, the children said that on the cross he was weeping. So that's why I asked this. And Jesus was weeping for the death of Lazarus. And when he was weeping also, he was not weeping out of despair. He never lost hope. But when he found that Lazarus is dead, he kept his eyes into heaven. He prayed to God, and when he prayed God, God did something to him. And therefore, he changed his life. Out of his despair, he found a ray of hope, saying that God can do something to this Lazarus. So that's how his friend Lazarus came out of his death. We see, dear brothers and sisters, so also should be whenever we are weeping, whenever we are crying, whenever we are feeling distress, God is always there beside us. Even in the first reading, even in the Old Testament also, book of Genesis, we see the first parents, when they had sinned or when they were being tempted, they could have asked for themselves, where is God? Or they could have asked for the help of God. But rather than, they relied upon themselves and they relied upon the words of the Satan, saying that the fruit which you are looking is beautiful. The fruit which you are looking is tasteful. So they were tempted, and in the temptation, they had a choice of asking for God. God is afraid that I eat this food. But they never did that, and they relied themselves upon them. That was the first sin they had committed. And therefore, in our mourning also, in our weeping also, let us never lose a hope. And the fourth beatitude is, whenever the people are persecuting you, you are blessed. We see other day there were 44 soldiers were martyred, right? Have you heard about this? Right? Yes, you heard? How could you hear? You were in the retreat? Okay, that's good. So, after the incident happened, the person, one who created that havoc, he gave an interview. There was a YouTube video in the YouTube. He said in that video, he said, the person said that he was doing this for the religion. Secondly, he was doing this for his country, which means the words of Jesus came true there. And the disciple, when Jesus said, foretold even long before, Jesus said that when they persecute you, when the disciples are persecuted, the government and all the persecutors, they will think that they are doing something good for the society, or they are doing something for good for the God Himself. So that is why in the name of God they will persecute you. So also it happened in the life of all the disciples. There is no one disciple that had faced the natural death. All of them were persecuted, killed and burned, and they were martyred. That's how we see how the words of Jesus came true in their life. So also, dear brothers and sisters, in our life also, the persecutions are so sure to come. But in that persecution, how are we willing to survive? How are we willing to open ourselves? Maybe in this world, maybe in our society, we may not experience such kind of persecution. But then there are moments where you need to expose yourself as a Christian. There will be a moment where you need to show yourself as a Christian. Suppose when you are writing exam, all of them, maybe let us take some Hindu students or some Hindu fellows will be there. Definitely they will be praying. But then our Catholics or Christians, Are they willing to make the sign of cross when they're beginning the day? Or whenever we are going to the office, workplace, are we beginning our day with the sign of cross? And whenever we are beginning our day, whenever we are beginning our activity, there we are exposing ourselves, where we are witnessing ourselves and showing to the world that I am a Christian and therefore I bear a hallmark of a Christian. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, this is how we can become a Christian. This is how we can become a holy and beatific life. Therefore, in this Holy Eucharist, let us pray for the graces so that throughout this life journey, we come to the goal of beatific life, which God promised. And in this Holy Eucharist, let us also pray for every one of us sitting here, so that may God bless every one of us. May God give us the strength and courage whenever we are feeling loneliness, or whenever we are feeling despair, or whenever we are feeling to mourning and weeping. May God bless every one of us here. Amen. Let us profess our faith. I believe in God,